it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this easy pumpkin, which I've called the Tweedy Little Pumpkin. When I see tweed yarn, it always reminds me of fall. So I've been wanting to make some pumpkins that are simple and easy to stitch up, and I'm planning on putting one of these at each place setting at the Thanksgiving table this year. So I wanted something that was small and quick to stitch up. So the main part of the pumpkin is made with this tweed yarn, and then the top part is made with this kind of wood colored yarn. So for this project, you're going to need a 6.5 millimeter K crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle. You'll need some fiber fill, some people call it polyfill, to stuff with. You can also use some scrap yarn or scrap fabric as well to stuff your pumpkin if you have some on hand. And then the yarn that I'll be using is just some leftovers. This is called Lion Brand's Tweed Stripes. This color is called Woodlands, and if we kind of dig around a little bit, you can see there's kind of gold colors, greens, browns. It's very fallish looking. I thought it would be perfect for this pumpkin. And then for the stem, I'm going to be using Lion Brand's Vanna's Choice in the taupe color. It's kind of like a really pretty grayish brown color. So let's get started. We're going to begin by making the stem first, and then we'll do the pumpkin second. So grab the tweed yarn, and we're going to begin by putting a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up the loop, and tighten. Next, we're going to chain 3. So to make a chain, wrap yarn around hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, and 3. Next, in the second chain from the hook, we're going to work a single crochet. So this loop here does not count. So we're going to count 1, 2 chains, insert the hook into that chain, bring up a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, wrap yarn around hook, bring through both loops. That's the single crochet. And then in that next chain, which is also the last chain, work a single crochet into that chain as well. Just like that, okay? Next, we're going to chain 1 and turn our stem. And in that very first chain, at the base of that chain 1 that we just did, work a single crochet, and then work another single crochet into that last chain. Super easy. Okay, so actually our stem is complete. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the yarn and our scissors, cut, and then fasten off. So just wrap it around your hook and pull it through. Okay, so this will be where we left off, will be the top of our stem. So grab your tapestry needle, thread your tapestry needle, and then just weave that end in. Just the end where you left off. We're going to leave the other end in place because we're going to use that to sew the stem onto our pumpkin when our pumpkin is complete. Okay? So go ahead and trim. Then you can kind of straighten things out. Okay? And then this will be sewn onto our pumpkin that we're going to make together. Okay? So let's work on the pumpkin next. The next thing we're going to do is the bottom part of our pumpkin. So with the same hook and the tweed stripes yarn this time, we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the loop, or the yarn behind the loop rather, reach in with your hook, bring up that loop, and tighten. The next thing we're going to do is chain 3. So to make a chain, once again, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to join with a slip stitch in the chain farthest from our hook. So come all the way down here, insert the hook into that chain farthest from the hook, bring up a loop, now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And what we're doing is creating a ring that we'll be working the stitches into. And I'm also going to hold this tail along the edge as I work to weave that in as we go along as well. So next what we're going to do is chain 2, 1, 2, and then into the center of this ring that we've created, we're going to work 11 half double crochets. So to make a half double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into the center of the ring, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, wrap yarn around hook, and bring it through all 3 loops. Okay? So once again, we're going to do that 11 times, and we just did 1. So that was 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So it should look something like this. And then what we're going to do is join with a slip stitch. Now we had those 2 chains when we began, so count the second chain up, insert the hook into that chain, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. Okay? And then that will be the beginning of our pumpkin. So then what we're going to do is, what I like to do is pull this tail tight, and that will close up that hole. See how that closes that up? As a side note, if you prefer to do the magic ring to get your ring started at the beginning, feel free to do that. I know a lot of you like to do that as well. All right, let's begin the next round. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2 once again. 1, 2. Now in this first stitch, we're going to work a half double crochet. And then for the rest of our circle, we're going to work 2 half double crochets into each stitch. So locate that next stitch, and we'll work 2 half double crochets all in that same stitch. So 1 and 2, next stitch, 1 and 2 half double crochets, next stitch, same thing, 2 half double crochets, next stitch, 2 half double crochets. Get some more yarn here, and you can see it's changing colors a bit, so that'll make for an interesting pumpkin. Next stitch, just doing this all the way around, working those half double crochets. Next stitch, same thing, 2 half double crochet. And what we're doing is increasing to get that volume of the pumpkin. That nice round shape is what we're trying to create at this point. So I'm just working my half double crochets, whoops, all the way around. And coming up to the end of the round here. And there's the last stitch. Just work those right in that last stitch as well, okay? So let's finish up this round. We're going to count 2 chains up like we did in the previous round. Insert the hook, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, okay? So let's move on to round 3 next. So for round 3, this is going to be the round that we're going to repeat for a few more rounds after this. We're going to now build up the sides of our pumpkin. So we kind of got the shape or the width of it. Now we're going to build up the sides of it, okay? So this is a really easy round. Just chain 2, work a half double crochet in that first stitch, and then in every stitch all the way around, okay? So that first stitch, next stitch, next, all the way around our circle. We're just going to work those half double crochets all the way around. And this tweed yarn is so much fun. But I wanted to mention as a side note that if you have a different yarn, you could use anything you like. You could use novelty yarn. You could use something with a little bit of sparkle for Halloween. You could use different colors of tweed if you want to create sort of like a tablescape. You could always, of course, do classic orange. You could go up in your yarn and do something chunky, like a chunky pumpkin. Just look on the yarn label for the recommended hook size for your particular yarn if you're kind of departing from this weight yarn. Okay, we're just working those half double crochets all the way around our pumpkin. Okay, we're coming up to the beginning where we started. And once again, those 2 chains, that topmost chain, insert and join with a slip stitch to close, okay? So we're getting the beginnings of our pumpkin. Now the row we just did round 3, we're going to repeat that 3 more times to get the rest of our pumpkin. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this round 3 more times, and then we will rejoin, and I'm going to show you how to finish up your pumpkin, because right now it looks very different from our finished pumpkin. So once again, this 3rd round we just worked, repeat that 3 more times, and then we'll rejoin in just a moment. If you need to see the round again, simply back up the video and watch it as many times as you like. But again, 3 more times on round 3. Okay, I repeated the rounds and I'm just working that last stitch. I'm going to join with a slip stitch to close the round, okay? So you can see right now it kind of looks like a little bowl. All right, so what we're going to do next is kind of assemble our pumpkin. So what we want to do is grab our scissors, our tapestry needle, and our fiber fill. So let's take our yarn here, and I'm going to cut a tail. Now I'm just guessing, but I need about 24 inches because that's going to help me seam up the top of this, but also get these seaming areas done on the sides to create that kind of classic pumpkin shape. So cut the yarn, leaving about a 24-inch or so tail. Doesn't have to be exact. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and fasten off. Now I have my long tail here. So wrap the yarn around your hook and pull this gigantic tail all the way through. Okay, and that will be the end of the crocheting part of this. And you can see all those fun fall colors happening. It's just such a fun little project. Okay, so what we're going to do next is thread our tapestry needle. Now I'm using chunky yarn, so I grabbed a larger tapestry needle for this because the eye of it will be a little bit easier to get that tail through. So what we're going to do, I threaded my tapestry needle, and then we're going to seam the top of this close. See, it's going to come together in the center. Okay, so what we're going to do is just go kind of in and out around the top edge of our pumpkin. Okay, you can do a few at a time and then sort of pull it through. Now the trick here, now I said 24 inches, this is probably a little bit too much, but I'd rather have it a little too long than run out of yarn. Okay, so we're just going all around the top edge here of our pumpkin. So just go in and out all the way around the edge. Just sort of doing a running stitch on that. Okay, about halfway around here. And tweed yarn and this chunky yarn is very forgiving. So try to make it neat, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It's a very forgiving yarn. Okay, just pulling that through. And we're just about where we began. Okay, so now we're back where we started, and you can sort of give it a little test tug to make sure it's gonna come all the way around. I'm gonna put 1 or 2 more stitches in that just to make sure. Okay, so now before we pull it closed, we're ready to stuff the pumpkin. So you might wanna kind of open it back up a little bit, and we're gonna put the fiber fill into the center of the pumpkin. Okay, so when you're stuffing things, you can, I think I may have mentioned this earlier in the video, but you can use yarn scraps, fabric scraps. I had a Flux reader even mention she uses cotton balls, which I think is a great idea, and everybody has those on hand. But if you have some fiber fill, you can use that too. So I'm going to grab a blob of it and just sort of stuff it into my pumpkin. Now I grabbed a little extra in case we need more. The trick with stuffing things is you want to make sure, now see how I'm like sort of stuffing and shaping? You want to make sure you get it nice and firm, but if you overstuff it, it will be so tight and pull your stitches apart. If you understuff it, it'll look sort of like a sad, deflated pumpkin, and you don't want that either. So just sort of like work it in there into all the nooks and crannies, down into the bottom of your pumpkin, and sort of squeeze it as you go along. Okay, now I feel like I have enough fiber fill in mine, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the top closed now, okay? So what we're going to do is grab our end. Now I have the needle still on there. That's okay, because we're going to use that again in just a moment. But let me get all this fiber fill out of the way. It makes a mess if you don't keep it bagged up. Okay, so grab your yarn tail, and we're just going to pull it shut. See how it's just cinching it closed? And now Now if you want, now some pumpkins have this shape, almost like an apple sort of, or a tomato. Now if you're not into that, I'm going to show you how to take your end and go around the edges here, and we're going to get that more of that pumpkin shape. But if you like this shape, feel free to do that as well. I'm just going to get everything kind of shaped up and sort of relax those stitches a little bit. Okay, so I pulled it tight, and now what we want to do is run your needle back in there and kind of go across the top of it with your tapestry needle, because what we want to do is get a nice secure knot on that before we proceed. Okay, now before you put the knot on there, if you've overstuffed it, this is your chance to pull a little bit out. Okay, now before I pull that loop all the way through, I'm going to run my needle through that loop one more time. That will give us a knot, nice knot on the top of it. Okay. Okay, so it looks kind of like that. It's a little lumpy. This is, next step is really going to kind of get that pumpkin shape. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is holding your pumpkin. Now I did this 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see my segments. You can do it more times if you like. It's totally up to you. So what you want to do is go around one of the edges of your pumpkin, and we're going to come back up through the middle of the bottom. Okay, so go up and back through. See, I'm going up through the bottom, and then we're going to come back. You might have to kind of shimmy it around a little bit, and then come back up through the center. Okay, just like that, and then pull it through. Now as you pull it through, now see how it's wrapping around the pumpkin? As you pull that through, you might need to kind of shift things around to get that yarn placed where you want it to be placed. And see, as you pull, see how it creates that ridge in your pumpkin? See that? Okay, so we're going to keep repeating this. Now I like to hold it because it can sort of loosen if you don't hold it. So go back around, come up from the bottom center of the pumpkin, and back up. Okay, and then we're going to sort of place the yarn where we want it to go. So I'm going to do 5 portions or segments like I did before. Okay, so this creates the first one, and I'm holding that yarn to keep that nice and tight. Keep repeating all the way around your pumpkin. And again, this yarn is very forgiving, so you can play around with it a little bit. Okay, now I need to shift that one over a bit. Okay, so now we have kind of the beginnings of our pumpkin. Holding that nice and tight, come up from the bottom. Might need to peek. See what we have here. Okay, all right, so just bring it all the way around and back up. Get nice and tight, pull it through. Now see these areas where you see a little fiber fill? We can go ahead and shape that up in a minute and get that nice and tight. So now I have a big portion left. I'm going to come back, sort of place my yarn where I want it to go, come up from the bottom. See, I'm wiggling it in there, it's a little snug, and come all the way through. Okay, get that nice and centered and pull it through. So if you have areas like this portion's a little bit big, you can sort of shift things around a little bit, get everything shaped up the way you want it to be shaped. And then we're going to just give it a nice tug and get everything shaped up. So the next thing we want to do is we want to fasten off, and we don't want it to pull back out. So we're going to take our tapestry needle and come up. Same thing we did a little bit earlier when we fastened off. We're going to come through some of these top stitches here. See, I'm going across the top of the pumpkin with my needle and pull it almost all the way through till you have a loop. Now run your needle into that loop, and it'll create a nice tight knot to finish things off. And you might want to shape things up a tad, but you know, pumpkins come in all shapes as well. So now what I like to do is, just because there's so much kind of riding on this knot, all the stuff we pulled through, I like to go in and put in another knot just to make sure, and you won't see any of this. So now we're going to weave this end in. So take your needle. Now whenever you make stuffed pieces, it's super easy to weave your ends in, because you just kind of go in one area and come out the other like this. Pull it all the way through, and see how it comes out on the side? What you're going to do is give that a tug up against, with your scissors up against the piece, and cut. making sure not to cut the piece itself. And then that tail will just disappear, okay? So the next thing you'll want to do is grab your tapestry. Now this will become a yarn scrap you can use to stuff your next pumpkin. And we're going to attach the stem now. So remember our stem we made a little bit earlier? Now this pumpkin is, now this one was green on the bottom and gold on the top. This one's green and gold as well. So find the side that you like the best. Now this side might be a little bit prettier, maybe you like the color better. Now I have one sort of gold, so I'm going to make my next one use the green side, okay? So grab your stem and you'll want to sort of position it how you want it to go and thread your tapestry needle. And then you'll want to position your stem, kind of snug it down into those divots of your pumpkin, make it sit nice. And then you can sort of fold it back and run your tapestry needle. This bent hook helps for these little tight spots here. Come in, grab a loop from the pumpkin, grab a loop from the stem, and bring it through. Leaving that tail intact, remember we did that earlier, gives you a tail you can use. It's super easy. Okay, and just do this a few times, seaming your pumpkin. Check it every so often if you need to reposition. I often need to kind of reposition mine the way I want it. And we're just running a couple of stitches in there. And this Vanna's Choice taupe is the perfect kind of, you know when you cut a pumpkin and it sort of, the stem's not green anymore, it sort of dries out and makes like a wood looking stem. Okay, so I just want to put a little tiny knot at the end where I left off and just kind of push that down against your stem. And then we're going to weave the end in the same way we did earlier. Just run that end down through the middle and back through, and see how it just pulls it in so nicely. And then we're going to hold our scissors flush up against the pumpkin, trim, and that end will simply disappear. Okay? So we have 2 pumpkins now. Now I have lots of pumpkins to make before our family festivities. So that is the Tweedy Little Pumpkin. We have a greenish one and a kind of gold one. Now depending on how much stuffing you put in these and your tension, and really, remember we ran the yarn tail around to create the portions, each pumpkin will kind of have its own personality and its own shape like a real pumpkin will, okay? So that is how you crochet the Tweedy Little Pumpkin. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.